All right, let's go ahead and go over 2.22. The star thinking part says Amy is asked to graph the following inequality. What is wrong with her answer? Fix the graph so that it accurately represents the solutions to the inequality. Now, you would have to look at the blank copy to see what it looked like before I fixed it, but basically it was just a line. There was no dotted line and there was no shading. And the reason why I popped this in was I was looking through kiddos' homework and I saw that a lot of students were still just graphing the line. Even though it's an inequality, it needs to either have a dotted or a solid line, and there should be shading if it's an inequality. So what the students were able to see was that there was no dotted line when it should have been dotted because it is either greater than or less than, and then it was not shaded. So then we shaded. You could either test 0, 0 and see that 0, 0 did not work, so you're not going to shade on that side, you're going to shade on the other, or since this thing is in slope-intercept form with the y on the left, you can see that since it is greater than, it will be shaded above because your y's are going to be bigger than that value. So that's what we did on that one. On these other problems, basically what we were looking at was a situation, and we were modeling the situation as an inequality. So on this one, it says that a person is going to be planting grass and or putting in flower beds. It's a different price per square foot for flower beds versus grass. It's $2 per square foot for grass and $12 per square foot for the flower beds. And they have a budget of $3,000. So as I've told you guys before, I like to think of the situation as basic as possible. So it is money spent has to be less than or equal to the budget. Then the money spent, there's two aspects. There's the money spent on grass and money spent on flowers. And the money spent on grass is going to be represented by 2x, $2 times the number of square feet. And then for the flowers, it is going to be $12 per square foot. So that is 12y. And then that is going to be the less than or equal to the 3,000, which is the budget. Now, on the right-hand side, we got it into slope-intercept form, but I realized that it would be easy to find the y-intercept of 250, but trying to figure out how to go down by 1 and over by 6 was kind of confusing because each one of our little increments here, we went by 50s. That's what it's labeled at. Obviously, there's one in between that, which is 25, but either way, trying to do a slope of down 1 over 6 is going to be kind of confusing. So instead, what we did was we graphed using x and y intercepts. Remember, for x-intercepts, y has to be 0, and for y-intercepts, x equals 0. So on the bottom of the graph, you can see where I substituted in 0 for y, getting rid of the 12y, or I substituted in 0 for x, getting rid of the 2x. Now, what's kind of cool here is not only does it tell you where the x and y intercept are, but it also tells you whether you're going to be lower, smaller, or bigger than that number. So it is x is less than or equal to 1500. So at 1500, we put a point and we showed that it was going to be less than that with a little arrow. Then on the other one, it was going to be less than or equal to 250. So at 250, we could put a point and then we could say that it was coming down from there. At that point, now you would test the point 0, 0 to see if it works, and it does. So that told us to shade in that direction, but the arrows also tell us to shade in that direction. After that, we moved on to this next problem. This next problem was talking about profit from selling necklaces and bracelets. It was $9 profit for necklaces, $5 profit for bracelets. At first, they wanted to have an equation saying the person wanted to sell or make exactly $100 profit. And then after that, we looked at the inequality, and that was that they wanted to make more than 100. So once again, once you get your inequality, which was 9n, represents how much you're going to be making from the necklaces, and 5b for how much you're going to make for the bracelets, we know that that is going to be greater than 100. Now you could get this into slope-intercept form and try to graph if you look at the y's and the x's on here, it's not some crazy numbers. I still felt like it would be better for us just to graph using x and y intercepts. So we found the x-intercept, the y-intercept, and not only did it tell us where the x and y-intercept are, they told us that they had to be bigger than those numbers, which gave me those little arrows I set on the side. And then after that, it told us exactly where to shade, and I made sure to do dotted. I always forget dotted. I definitely made this key and then realized, oops, I forgot to do dotted, and I had to put some white out on there to white those pieces out. The next one says, is 3, 18.6 going to be a solution? There's two different ways you can check this. You could either just look at 3 and go up to 18.6 and see that it is shaded, or you can just put 3 and 18.6 into a calculator, which I'm going to do now just to make sure that I did not mess that up. Plus 5 times 18.6. And sure enough, it is going to be a solution. The last problem we did in class was this one. Went back to what we had talked about before about the number of calories for fat versus protein. And this person was still trying to make their keto snack with just fat and protein. The only requirement was it had to be less than 400 calories. There was no other requirement that we had. So with this one, since it's 4 calories for each gram of protein and 9 calories for each gram of fat, I haven't been labeling and noting what our variables are. So I really should be doing that. P equals the number of grams of protein. F is the number of grams of fat. We know that has to be less than 400. Once again, you could go over and get this in a slope-intercept form, but I find it much easier to graph these when I'm doing x and y intercepts. So I went over and found out that you're going to have your x-intercept at 100, and it's going to be saying that it's less than that. And then the other one was going to be at 400 over 9, which is 44.4. And then it's going to be smaller than that, so we knew that we were just going to shade below or to the left. And we could have also tested 0, 0 and seen 0, 0 worked. And that's why it was going to be shaded in that direction. It then asks if you could have 40 grams of fat and 80 grams of protein, and since that is not shaded, the answer is no. You could also substitute that into your inequality and see if it works. Now on this one, going over the homework, it is saying that you have to have a certain amount of money in your savings and in your checking, and together it has to be at least $500. So you could have all the money in your checking or all the money in your savings. That would be the 0, 500 or 500, 0. We know that $500 is enough. It says 500 or more, and that's how I knew that it had to be greater than or equal to. And then we had our shading, which was going to be all the numbers that would produce a total that would be greater than 500. You could have also checked 0, 0 and seen 0, 0 did not work. So the only other option is the other side. On number 2 here, it says that a person is selling popcorn for $3 each, lemonade for $2 each, and they need to make a profit of more than, not at least, but more than 120 bucks. So that was the 3P. P should be the number of bags of popcorn. I really should be defining those. And C would be the number of cups of lemonade. And then the amount you make has to be greater than 120. Once again, you could graph this using slope-intercept form, but I find it much easier just to graph using x and y intercepts. Not only does it tell you where the x-intercept and y-intercept are, but it'll tell you which way you're going to shade if you're looking at the inequality symbol. Explain how we could check the boundary is included or not included. You could always take a point on that line and see if it works, if it makes the inequality true, and it would not make the inequality true, so we know that those are not solutions. The next one is talking about tickets to the aquarium are $11 for adults and $6 for children. There's a budget of $200. We're explaining all the reasons why this graph does not make sense. The first one is it should be solid because they're allowed to spend 200 bucks. And then the shading is in the wrong place because this is saying that they could spend way over $200, infinite amount of dollars. On number 4, it says Tyler filled a small jar with quarters and dimes. He says that he knows there's at least $8.50. So since it says at least, it is going to be either greater than or equal to. The amount that you have from dimes is going to be 10D, quarters is 25Q, and I'm doing pennies rather than dollars just to make it a little bit easier. Once again, I am going to graph this using your x and y intercepts, because not only will it tell you where the intercept is, but it'll tell you which way you're going to be shading. You could have also tested 0, 0 and found out that 0, 0 is not a solution, so that side can't be, and it's got to be the other. On these ones, I just wanted to get a little bit of practice on solving basic one variable inequalities. If you ever multiply or divide by a negative, you have to switch your sign. Otherwise, it is just like solving a normal inequality. And I'm glancing over this to make sure that I'm not making any mistakes, because you know me, I make mistakes, silly ones usually. On the second problem, on B, you can see we had to switch the sign. We had to switch the sign on A as well because you multiplied or divide by a negative. On C, you do not have to, even though there is a negative involved. And the reason you do not have to switch the sign is because you are dividing by a positive. It's not that there's a negative as part of the problem, just if you're multiplying or dividing by a negative. This last one is a little bit of review. It says if you're trying to solve this by substitution, the first step is getting one of the equations in x equals or y equals form. which one would you get into x equals or y equals form, and why? If you tried to solve equation A in x equals form, you're going to have some ugly fractions, 7/3 and 11/3, and you really do not want to be substituting that into another equation. If you solve for y, you're going to have 3/7 and 11/7 when you get it into y equals form. On the other one, if you solve for x, you're going to end up with 2/6 and 10/6. Fractions, no bueno. But if you solve for y, since both 6 and 10 are divisible by 2, then you are not going to have any fractions, and then you can substitute it into the other equation. So my choice would be the second equation solving for y, because there would be no fractions. Thanks a bunch for watching.